Guys, hi guys, how you all doing? I know it's been a long time, but yeah, I'm finally back. You're welcome to my YouTube channel. It's about Kechinyere again. So guys, in this video we're going to be drafting a cowl neck dress, a cowl neck dinner dress, or it can be for any event, but it's a beautiful cowl neck dress. So without much further ado, let's just get into what we have for today. So the shoulder I'm going to be working with is 17, and I'm going to divide 17 by 2, which gives me 8.5. But I'm not going to be using the 8.5, I'm just going to be using 8 because it's a sleeveless, so I don't want it to be loose at the chest line. So I'm just going to be using 8 just to reduce a little bit gaping or whatever at the chest line. So guys, from there I'm going to figure out the bust point, which is 10 inches. I'm going to mark 10 inches and I'm going to square it all around. I'm just going to square it to get a straight line. The 1 inch shoulder slope, our shoulders are always slant, so I'm going to mark that 1 inch. That is what I marked there. I'm going to go ahead and mark out the waistline I'm working with. So the waistline I'm working with is 17 inches. I'm going to mark 17 inches as well, and I'm also going to square it out. I'll go ahead now to roll out the bust line and also roll out the waistline before marking out my hip line. Make sure to measure your client to know where the hip line, the one I'm working with, is 9 inches from the waistline, so I'll go ahead and square it 9 inches. So from the shoulder, I'm going to be marking out the upper chest line. So the round bust I'm working with is 38 divided by 6 plus 1.5 inches, that's about 7.5. So I'm going to mark it there. So make sure to measure your client's own and know what you're going to mark to create the upper chest line. So this is going to be an edge for creating the cowl neck. I'm basically going to square at the upper chest line. I'm going to basically mark the shoulder measurement, which is 8 inches, and just square it upwards to the shoulder so I can make a straight line there. So now the next step is to mark out the neckline, though this step is not necessary because we are not going to be needing it, but for basic purpose I'm going to be marking out 3-inch width by 3-inch length. The next step is to basically, from the slope you marked out, just measure from there to your upper chest line. Whatever it gives you, divide it by 2. That is to cut out the front armhole to make it perfect. So mine gave me 7 inches. Dividing it by 2, it gives 3.5. I'm going to mark 3.5 at the shoulder line there. And at the center, I'm just going to mark half an inch inwards to connect to the shoulder slope and to connect to the armhole, that's the upper chest line, to create a perfect arm curve. Moving on guys, I'll go ahead to label the bust point, the upper chest line. I use UPL, don't mind that guys. So guys, go ahead and give this video a thumbs up. So moving on guys, the bust point I'll be working with is 38 inches. So go ahead and divide 38 inches by 4. Give me 9.5, so I'll go ahead and mark the 9.5. I realized I didn't label the waistline and the hip line and also the hemline, so just go ahead and label yours guys. You already know your lines. Moving on guys, the waistline I'm working with is 31 inches, so 31 inches divided by 4, that is about 7.75. So yet I've not started adding an allowance yet. I'm going to add the allowance, but let me just get the main body measurements. So I'm going to place 7.75 inches there, and I'm going to quickly move on to the waist, the hip line. The hip line I'm working with is 41 inches. So make sure to measure your client and divide it by 4. So 41 divided by 4 gave me about 10.5. I am going to place 10.5 at my hip line. I'm going to proceed to connect the lines from the upper chest line. I'm going to connect to the waistline. You can see the curve rule I'm using. If you don't have this, you can use your straight rule. All you need to do is to just taper in at the waistline and the hip line so it's not so sharp. So now from the hip line, I'm going to connect it straight back to the waistline. You can see how I did that there. So now you can see that the edges are sharp, like I was saying. So from my waistline, from my hip line, I'm going to put the measurements down to the hemline. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to be minusing 1 inch. So at this point, you choose what you want to do. I'm making a floor length dress, so I'm going to mark that there. Remember, I'm going to cut this dress on a bias form, and that is what is going to give the hemline a flowy structure, or is going to give the hemline a very beautiful structure. So I'm going to place the 9.5 there, and now I'm going to come in at the waistline and taper it in because the edges are too sharp. I wouldn't want that to be like that, and I'll do the same thing at the waistline also. So guys, now for the cowl neck, I'm going to go upward from the upper chest line. I'm going to go by 1.5 inches to get the cowl neck. So I'm just going to place 1.5 inch from the upper chest line, not the bust line this time, from the upper chest line. I'm just going to place 1.5 inches there and connect the line. Guys, I hope by this time you've given me a thumbs up, you've liked, you've subscribed to my channel. I'm going to be adding half an inch at the armhole slant, so I'm just going to mark it all around to mark half inch there. So now we cut. So guys, this is about to get interesting. We're cutting from the 1.5 inch we went up, remember, not the bust point, not the upper chest line, but the 1.5 inch we went up by. So guys, that's it, basically it's cut. So now I'll introduce a new pattern paper, that is the back. So basically guys, back I'm working with is going to be starting at the armhole line. You can see me trying to place a dot or whatever because I wasn't using a transparent paper. So if you're using a transparent paper, just go ahead and trace where you want the back to be. So don't mind me doing that, guys. That's what I basically did there. So just go ahead and trace from the front pattern where you want the back to be. I'm just basically going to be adding 1 inches as a seam allowance or ease allowance. I'm doing that because my client wants hers to be free. She doesn't want hers to be tight, and because I didn't make a provision for zipper, I didn't want the dress to have a zipper. That's the reason I'm adding 1 inch. And I'm sure if I'm cutting it too, I'm going to also leave small allowance so it can be able to enter her without much force. So guys, for the center back, I'm going to make mine to start from 1.5 inch below the bust point. That is how I wanted it. I wanted to slant from the armhole to the bust point. That's 1.5 inch below the bust point. So at this point you can freestyle, at this point you can choose what you want, but I want it to be tapered in. From the design up there, you can see that it's really an open back with a strap going across. So I want it to come down a little bit. From the bust point, I'm going to mark 1.5 inches downwards. So that's what I'm basically doing here. So now I'm going to connect the lines from the center back to the armhole. So you can basically notice that I just traced it out instead of starting afresh to draft the bust point, the waist, the hip, the everything. I just traced it out. If you have a pattern paper that is very transparent, it's very easier. So you could just make a tiny with a tracing wheel or something, but I could actually make that out for my pencil. It's time to cut. Like I said, I just made my life a whole lot easier. I just didn't want to start all over to start drafting the whole thing. So I just traced it. I just placed the pattern paper under, and I just traced the armhole, and I traced where I want the center back to be, and I just connected it. So now I'm going to be cutting it from the front panel. I'm going to cut it all out. So remember, I've added my allowance and everything. Go ahead and add your allowance. Welcome to the most interesting part of a cowl neck dressmaking, guys. I'm so excited about this part because this is where the work is. So guys, you can see that I've gone ahead to add an extra paper underneath my front pattern. Now I'm going to cut open from the upper chest line, but I'm not going to cut everything out because I wouldn't want to get myself through the stress of taping it back. So cut it carefully and don't cut everything. Just remain a very little piece of amount that you can tape to the paper, and then you can slant it open however wide you want it, but just don't do it too much so your chest area doesn't open so wide, or I don't, however way you want it. If you want it to lower down your belly, it's okay, but that's not the cowl neck I'm making. The one I'm making is the one that just lowers at the bust point. So that is it. So you can see me taping the paper down to hold it still so it doesn't shift while I do the rest of the work. At this point, you cannot decide how wide you want to spread yours. I'm spreading mine by 4 inches. Like I said earlier, I don't want it to be too open at the chest area. So I'm going to spread. You can see how I'm holding that with the paper and the ruler there. So I'm going to spread it out by 4 inches. You can see me measuring that 4 inches. I'm going to make a mark there at the 4 inches, and I'm going to tape it down as well to avoid it shifting. I'm going to mark a straight line from there to the 4 inches spread I made, or above the 4 inches spread I made, just where the front pattern stops. You can see how I'm connecting the line. Just watch how I'm connecting the line. After connecting the line from the front of the pattern to the top of the front pattern, you can just rule a straight line like a rectangular line. And from there, I'm just going to align my armhole line to the top of the line I made. Just trace it, the armhole line and the seam allowance. Just trace them together and align them as you can see me doing. So at the line, I'm just trying to make a fold. Just watch what I'm doing closely. I'm only trying to make a fold from the line I made. That is how I'm going to be able to create the facing of the cowl neck. So make sure that the paper underneath is long enough to, you can see where mine is. So make it long enough. It's mine, I made it 3 inches below the bust line. You can see the bust line. So I made it 3 inches below the bust line. You can make yours 2 inches, but however, we make sure that it's long enough. Moving on, guys, I'm going to mark 3 inches from my bust line downwards. That is to create my facing. So guys, basically I'm just going to make a row from the facing down to the part where the front pattern stops. That's just to make it aligned so there's no excesses at the end of the day. So I'm just going to trim that off because it's not needed anymore. Moving on, guys, I'm going to go from the underbust, from the bust point rather, and I'm going to mark 3 inches. So that is what I'm basically going to be using for this facing. So I want the armhole line to be neatly finished. That's the reason I made it 3 inches below the bust point. So I'm going to go ahead and trim the unwanted part off, and also noting where I marked the 3 inches. So right at the center front, I'm going to go down by 2 inches. Remember, from the side front, I went down by 3 inches. So guys, after making the line prominent, I'm going to flip over the front pattern and connect the both lines, the 2 inches from the center line, center front, and the 2 inches from the 3 inches from the side front. So I'm just going to basically connect it together and cut that off. You can see me marking X now. That means I don't need that part anymore. So basically, guys, that is it about the facing of the cowl neck. It's easy as that. So guys, you can see how beautiful this is already looking, and this is a perfect way you can draft your cowl neck gown, your dinner dress. If you just want a beautiful perfect cowl neck that will turn out good, just draft it this way and you'll get a perfect cowl neck. So guys, at this point, if you've not given me a thumbs up, I don't know what you're waiting for. If you've not liked my channel, come on, that is not fair. Go ahead and click the subscribe button, like, share, comment to your friends that need a sewing tutorial. So guys, basically at the back, I'm going to be doing a little bit modification like I showed previously, the opening at the back. So I'm just going to incorporate that in this back pattern also. So at the waistline, the client wants us to start from 15 inches. So basically what I'm going to be doing is from the waistline I'm going to go up by 3 inches. So by the time I'm done sewing the facing and turning it over, it will be 2 inches. So from the side back, I'm going to come in by 4 inches in a straight line. That's from the waist to the top of the back pattern. I'm going to come in by 4 inches and pull it there all through. So after making the 4 inches line, now I'm going to connect from the 3 inches side back, from the 3 inches center back to the place I marked 4 inches. That's just basically it, guys. At this point you can freestyle. So guys, thank you so much for watching. See you guys on the sewing tutorial. So guys, bye for now. Please like, share, comment, subscribe to my channel.